everyone. Welcome to Truth Teller Tales. I'm Ellen, and I am so excited to start this channel where I'm going to be interviewing the truth tellers, the determined patriots, the anons, the digital soldiers who have put themselves out there in this most historic time because they have had the eyes to see what was happening. And I feel it is their time to tell their story, and that's what this channel is all about. So I'm totally honored to have for my very second guest, Scott Zimmerman, who has been a warrior for years and years and red pilling people one at a time for all the things that he's doing. So I'm excited to bring him on. So I'm going to bring him on right now. Hey, Scott, how are you?
Hi, Ellen. Truly honored to
What
be here with you. This is going to be a fun ride together.
You are so awesome to trust me to do this, and you're brave, and I appreciate it so much.
Actually,
But
the show I'm doing 2 hours after this is about you, and it's about people just like you. It's called Don't Die with Your Music Still Inside of You. And when I met you, I knew you've got stories, you've got ideas, and in the Anons, we're a certain age. And we're one of those rare generations where we got to live back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s when we were free and we weren't tethered by phones as kids. And we're
right,
kind of that last generation of, non-tethered, non-digital sort of thing. So we've kind of lived in two worlds. And 20, 30 years ago, I had this idea and I was begging anybody with a camcorder. This is before phones. Go interview every World War II veteran you can find because we're losing them. So we're
yes,
now in this era where I'm begging people, get it out, whether it's a podcast or a Substack or a journal or a blog or a vlog, get it out. The world, we're leaving little time capsules.
absolutely. And your encouragement has meant the world to me, by the way. And so I really, really appreciate you and this whole movement. And I've admired you from afar, so it's really cool to be able to talk to you. So I wanted to start out at least it with present and then go backwards. And so in general right now, just tell me what you've been doing to get yourself out there and this information out there.
Well, first of all, everything I do, none of it is about me. It's about the movement and it's about guests who come on my podcasts. And I'm trying to, I'll just say it. I am living the rest of my days, however many I get, nobody knows, but I want to see how many people I can help before I go home. And I want to see what I can add to the Great Awakening and to help people get through whatever else is coming. And if I can do those two things, that on my last gasp, I'll say, give it a good go.
Absolutely, and you're doing such an amazing job. And I actually want to pull up your information going across the bottom too. Um, so now I I know you're not comfortable with this, but I really think it's important. I just want to kind of dive into what makes you tick and start at the beginning, if we can. So just start with where you were born and things
I
like that, and then
I was
we'll be
born a
asking
I
questions.
was born a poor black child,
Thank
and
you, Steve Martin.
yeah, I know it's sorry, but when that movie came out when I was like 12 or 13, and it was
Yeah,
just right around the time Blazing Saddles. You get a 12-year-old boy and fart jokes, and things are just going to stick.
that's so true.
The short version was I was a smart kid who just refused to get decent grades. I was always bored and I guess disengaged in school. And so I probably didn't have the best childhood, but I deserved all the punishment. I just refused to get decent grades. And so, not wanting 4 more years of hell, I knew I couldn't go to college. So, halfway through my senior year, I'm walking through the hallways at school, and there were sitting these recruiters. And I stopped by and had a chat. And I was particularly taken by this gentleman from the US Army. And I went and took their battery of tests. And the funny part was, after I took the first one, he came out and he goes, "Gonna need you to retake that." I go, okay. And it's, I remember, I think it was 8 tests trying to see if you're smart and how you're smart. And then this time he goes, "Can you come back, I think, in a couple of days?" And I did. Well, this time there was another guy sitting there and they made me take it again in front of 2 of them. And they both looked at each other and they go, "Well, this is a weird one." I go, "What?" They said, "Well, you've scored 7 100s and a 0 3 times in a row."
Wow.
I'm like, "Okay, what's the 0?" And it's something called spatial perception. So I'm only telling you this because my brain doesn't like to see things folded and unfolded and what it would be if it was laid out with dots and folding, and it just says, "Nope, out." So I go, "Well, this will affect the job I can get. I want a good job in the military." And I was thinking about getting out. So I said, "What's the best job I can get when I get out?" And they were kind of doing their own little side hustle. And I realized they were talking about me and trying to figure out how to sneak me through, because I think they were enamored by the 7 100s. They're thinking, we got a smart kid that we should get him in. So they said, "Here's the deal. You just scored 7 100s and a 60. First time the system ever worked in my favor." And they said, "What job do you want?" And I got it backwards. I had said, "What pays the most when I get out?" And they said, "An electronic warfare intercept systems technician." In other words, we'll teach you how to fix high-end electronics, and you're going to need a TSSI clearance. So when you get out, companies like Goodyear Aerospace, they'll line up for you. The clearance back then in the early 80s was worth $100,000. Now it's probably $500,000. And so anyways, I said, "Yeah, I want that schooling." And of course, back then they had no way of knowing I would be terrible at electronics. I could envision how to build them better, but to troubleshoot, I'm not a linear thinking. I'm a parallel thinker, not a serial thinker. So anyways, I did 4 years in Army intelligence, and I enjoyed it, but I wanted out. And when I got out, I bounced around, and I wanted to go to college. I had saved up a good chunk of my money while I was in, and I got into this program, $2 for one. So I enrolled at Akron University. I wanted to learn marketing. That was my passion. And when I went to spend my money at Akron U, they made me take a phys ed requirement, even though I just got out of the military. So I looked at the list and I spent $660. Back then was a lot of money to take intro to bowling to satisfy their phys ed requirement. And I had qualified as the captain of the Akron U bowling team. That's all I did as a teenager was bowl, and I was freakishly good at it. So I just spent $660 to take a course called Intro to Bowling. And I bowled a 240 something, and the TA, a kid, 18-year-old, said, "You just bowled a 240 something, and today we were learning how to keep score." And I go, "Yeah, it's kind of stupid, isn't it? I just wanted to learn marketing." And he goes, "Yeah, that's kind of weird." And later on, I'm sitting in a course on institutions in the US. I looked around, there's a bunch of 18-year-old kids, and we're learning about 1870s industrial revolution. And then I took geology for another $800. And I'm sitting in a course where there's no professor, just this shitty video playing in the corner about igneous and sedimentary. And I looked around the room for the last time, and I left my textbooks there. I got in my car and I drove home. I wasn't living with my folks at the time. I was living with my friend, but I went over to see my mom, and I just said, "I can't do this. I just want to learn marketing." And she said, "Well, there's a library." And she said, "You lasted longer than I thought you would." She said, "I'm not built for traditional education either, but you're a quick learner. You can learn anything. Go to the library and become great at marketing. But know this, if you don't go back to college, everything you do for the rest of your life, you're going to have to outthink and outwork everybody else with a marketing degree." And I said, "I'll take that trade." So I began becoming self-educated in marketing. And in 1989, I had lunch with my mom's friend who was a print broker. And he said, "I can teach you how to do this." His name was Jess Yoder, and I'll never forget, I thanked him. And so I thought, well, I can go out and sell letterhead and envelopes at retail, and I can buy them at wholesale. Maybe I can make money. And within a few months of starting Print Miser, that was just me selling printing, I got a request from a customer, "Can you make our letterhead look better?" So I went out and I bought a Macintosh Performa and a book called Graphic Design for Dummies, and I made their letterhead look better. And so I began learning about graphic design, and then a customer said, "Can you do our brochure?" And I said, "If you can wait a few months, I can." So I bought books on copywriting, branding, positioning, psychology, and influence. And I began to learn how to write marketing copy. So I designed and wrote their brochure. And then somebody said, "Can you letter vehicles?" And I said, "If you can wait a month." So I bought a vinyl cutter, and Printmiser eventually became Zimmer Graphics, and we were a full-fledged marketing ad agency, graphics company. And I did that for probably 7 or 8 years, and I got bored with that. I was reading books like Permission Marketing and One-to-One Marketing, The One-to-One Future. I thought, well, let's skate to where I think marketing is going on true matching messages based on psychographics and criteria. So I wound up writing a book called Courting Corporate Clients, which I do need to finish. I finished writing all the other ones, but I need to finish the first one. And it was a metaphor about how dating in sales, it's like dating in marriage, and marketing needs to help the salesperson. So I wound up inventing software that can match messages based on personality type, different products, different services, how they ingest information. And it would just automate everything for salespeople, including if your customer golfs, it would remember their birthday and send them a sleeve of golf balls on their birthday as if you did it. So I called it Cyrano for Cyrano de Bergerac. It could write the love letters and send them along. And then I did that. And long story short, I just kept morphing and learning and morphing and learning and morphing and learning. And so when Q came along, I was on vacation. And somehow I was early in the morning. I was up before the people. We were staying at their house, and I saw this thing on YouTube. And this guy had this thing over his shoulder, and he was reading this something. Now we know him as a Q drop. And as soon as he was done reading it, I started reading it from the bottom to the top because I wondered if there was hidden messages in there because it was so weird how it was worded. And when I read it from the bottom to the top, I got a whole different meaning. And I thought, wow, there's somebody's playing a game, and it's a good one. And I just thought, whoever wrote this, they're super smart and they like to play. I'm super smart. I like to play. So this was November 2nd of 2017. So I was only 5 days
Wow.
late discovering
Yeah.
Q. So I only had to go back and reread like 50 of them, which wasn't bad. I don't know how anybody get caught up today, but
Right.
4,950 of them. But I was fortunate, and I just was totally consumed by it. And I just knew it was real. I don't know how I knew, but it resonated within every fiber of my being. So I looked at my wife. It's like 6:30 in the morning. And I got my nose this far from the laptop. I mean, I'm in. She goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I found something." And then I said, "The smartest thing I've ever said," followed by the dumbest thing I've ever said. And I said,
What?
"Honey, I don't know what this is, but I think it's real. And if it is, other than the story of Jesus Christ, this may be the second greatest story ever told." Now, how prescient was
Wow.
that? And here's the dumbest thing I ever said. "You know, honey, I'm going to take a week or two off work and see this thing all the way through to the end."
You talked a week or two. Oh my gosh. Well, before you keep going, I have so many questions. So you skated over your early years of education. So obviously that time you weren't conforming and it was just kind of a blur and it wasn't something that you felt like you had to conform to, I guess, to feel like you were top of the class or whatever. It just wasn't important to you, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was a little more psychologically based than that in hindsight. But I had a sister 2 years older than me that was straight A's, honors society, but she was also a drop dead gorgeous blonde. So she was homecoming queen, head majorette. I mean, I went through life as Sherry's little brother. And for those of you listening to
Yeah.
me talk for the first time, I don't normally talk about myself. I hate it. And the
Yeah.
only reason I'm doing this is because as a show host, my worst nightmare is when somebody comes on with me and they give me like one sentence answers. And I don't want to be that guest for her because I know how difficult it is to fill time if you have to do both sides of the conversation. So I'm trying to be a nice guest to her and give her stories. And anyways,
Well,
I
I
just,
appreciate it, and I mean, I know I'm gonna start seeing patterns, because I know that there has to be some, um, things that are similar to all of those
you'll
people like
find them.
you.
Oh no, I'm only serial number two. Wait till I just doing my 107th straight show today.
Yeah,
Now
but
I'm getting patterns. So now I'm seeing, you're on the right track, Ellen. You just need to keep going. You're going to be great at this.
thank you, and so, I mean, just this couple things you've already said, I'm like, "Oh," I mean, it just all starts to make sense, and so you had the older sister who beautiful, smart,
Yeah, so
all the
we moved from city to city one time, and something happened when we relocated. And I remember I was in the fifth grade, and at the new school, for whatever reason, I got straight A's that first year in the new city. And then for some reason, whether it was the teacher or maybe I just figured I just couldn't compete for attention anymore. I just found that I got more attention getting D's than I ever
yeah,
did getting straight A's. But also, to be honest, I was bored constantly. So I remember, I mean, I was always making games at my desk. I mean, I had games going on underneath back then the desk would raise a little bit. I had
yeah.
clay games going on in there, and I was writing short stories and anything I could do to keep my brain occupied. I remember I was always gazing out the window and whatever they were talking about, I always remember thinking, we're 10 minutes into this. We wrapped this up 5 minutes ago. Why are you still talking about this?
Yeah, yeah,
But
most definitely. I mean, that absolutely makes sense to me. And so as time went on for junior high, we called it at that time,
mhm.
and then high school, did you find yourself um, just just kind of getting through? Were you with a certain group? Were you
Oh
rebellious
yeah,
against the
I went
teaching?
the bad way. She was the popular one with the jocks, and but she also had that gift of a chameleon. She could hang around with the hoods, and she fit in everywhere. So as for me, I just kind of checked out of all of it. I found myself a job where I could work in a bowling alley, and I started off as just a porter cleaning things up. And then that was at 12, and by 14, I became a mechanic. I learned how to fix all the machines,
Oh
and
wow!
so I right after school I could run to work and hide.
Yeah.
And then I could work late and then go to school and sleep and then go back to work till 1 in the morning and go to school and sleep, which worked out beautifully for me because I didn't really fit in with anybody. And so as I've had time to look at who recruited, oh, I've got the pattern recognition. And
Yeah.
when I briefly mentioned the software I invented that could match messages based on different criteria, at the time, I didn't realize it, but I was teaching myself psychographics and profiling. I just
Oh
didn't have
wow!
any title at the time, but I knew that if a salesperson could learn different things about a different person, we could change the messaging around
Yeah.
that individual. Well,
Right.
all that work I did in learning that paid off hugely when Q came along because I started thinking
Yeah.
about what are the attributes that make up most anons, especially the ones that found it early. And by and large, we were loners.
Mhm.
IQ, I'm not a big believer in IQ, but probably between 125 and 140. Um, Game players, competitive, hate to lose, don't mind working by ourselves, natural problem solvers, curious people, just curious about things, open minded,
Right.
by and large, misfits. As
Yeah.
I've gotten to know all my podcasting friends and the OGs, none of us fit in at school. We didn't fit in with our own families. But yet here we
Yeah.
are now clinging together. And so, what I've learned from this Q operation was they did something truly remarkable. They recruited super smart people that had something in common that they hated. They hated the fact that we were the I told you so sort of people. They hated the fact that we always wanted to find things first and brag to everybody else, I'm smarter than you are. And I'm like, why would they recruit us? And then I realized, well, they did it. And then they made sure we got everything wrong the whole time. That's why Hillary
Oh,
never got arrested. That's why nobody got perp walked. That's why everything we were talking about, none of it happened. And I'm like, why would they do that? So they would recruit an army of digital soldiers and then leave us hanging out to dry. Why would you do that?
yeah.
And you know why?
Yeah, tell me.
Because when I was 17, it was easy to tear me down and rebuild me. That was just 8 weeks of boot camp. All you had to do back then was cut off all my hair, put me in a uniform, and make me do push ups all day until you beat out of me this thing of Scott Zimmerman and you made me turn me into Private Zimmerman. And it works when you're 18. Good luck doing that to somebody who's 55. If you want to
Yeah,
rebuild somebody at 55, it would take you not 8 weeks, it would take you 8 years because we're too set in our ways. And what they did was they systematically ground out our egos. That's why we were wrong after being wrong, after being wrong, after being wrong, because they needed servant leaders to go out into our communities who were kind and humble and non judgmental and patient. So when those around us began waking up, there's never any hint of, I told you so, or I knew this 7 years ago. It's just, oh, thank goodness. I've been waiting to talk with you, not talk at you or talk to you. I've been waiting to talk with you, and we're finally getting close. But for the Anons who've been in early like me and are still here, you'll notice that these podcasters that are really becoming popular have one thing in common. They don't have much ego. It's never about
yeah,
them. The show is always about the audience and about, hey,
right,
look what we found. This is
right.
interesting. Not here's what to think about it, but this is interesting. Let's look at it together.
Exactly. And before we move on, because I have so much to say about that, I have to you solved one puzzle for me. Now I know why you got a 240 bowling in college because you had that job when you were younger.
That's all I did was I worked and I bowled. That was it.
Yeah. Well,
Well, there
now
might
I
have been
know.
some beer drinking in there too. But
Yeah. But you hope to get your game going there. But then, but obviously when you were in college, you had already been in the military, right?
yes,
And so to you, seeing those 18-year-old kids and I mean, it wouldn't be tolerable for
no,
someone who's a little, yeah. And so obviously, and the again, what you mentioned that one of your maybe your mom said that, you have to work twice as hard if you don't have the degree in marketing. Hasn't that been the psychological psyop we've all been in,
mhm.
right? T
Ironically, I sat in so many hundreds of meetings in the 30 years I ran my business. And every time there was a VP of marketing, a president of marketing, a marketing manager, a marketing coordinator, number one, not once in my career did anybody ever ask me if I had a marketing degree, let alone where I had it from. It never came up. Number two, and I'm not bragging, I'm just being honest. I would often, just as a little bit of a chat, I would just say to the marketing person who was in the meeting, well, first of all, they hated me because they knew I was probably going to expose them for being inept at what they were doing to support the salespeople and generate quality leads and help the salespeople with the leads. But they not only reviewed me as a bit of a threat, but I would ask them something like, what was the last 3 books you read on marketing? I'm trying to build my library. And almost without fail, they would stare at me like a dog looking at a ceiling fan. And I realized that when they got their degree, they stopped learning.
Yeah,
They took the job and they went and worked the job. Whereas I
right.
had this chip on my shoulder, having never gone to college, I never stopped reading. So I just
Yes,
thought, I just assumed everybody did. So I
right.
had this gift of insecurity. So I would read like a book a week, but then I would go out with my clients and try this stuff. Does it work?
Yeah,
So it was
yeah.
kind of like the world became the world's biggest lab for me to go out with small businesses and try all these marketing techniques and see what works and what doesn't.
So that's so interesting because even though the what you were told about having to work twice as hard because you didn't have the degree is the psyop, it made you do that, which you were 12 steps ahead of those people anyway, but it actually made you continue want to dig in and continue learning more because of that chip on your shoulder. And it's fascinating to me, because I think people have used that the crutch of having the degree to not to feel like
Well,
that they don't have
in
to learn.
in between walking away from college and starting Print Miser was about 4 or 5 years where I bounced around. So I tended bar, drove for UPS. I mean, I did all sorts of jobs just to pay my own rent. And in one of those, I was tending bar at night, and during the day, I talked myself into a job selling advertising specialties, trinkets, and trash. Shirts, hats, jackets, anything with a logo on it for to businesses. And I was straight commission. All she gave me was a box of business cards and some catalogs and said, go get them. That was my training. Well, in one of the sales calls I went on, it was a friend of my mom's. He owned this company. And I walked in and they were going to a trade show. And so I was going to give them some ideas on paint stirs, giveaways for the trade show. And there were three guys, the owner of the company, the GM, and this marketing consultant. I'm like, well, they got three guys into a meeting about $1 giveaway at the trade show. I didn't realize they were interviewing me for a job. So I was just answering their questions and just being me. And then the next day I followed up to see if they wanted to buy any of my products. And the president who took the call says, no, but we want to hire you. And I said,
Oh,
what? So they said, yeah, we really like your energy and your enthusiasm, and you're a smart kid. And, so they hired me. But unfortunately, the only one who worked with me was the GM, and he was an a-hole. And I'm being nice. So for 3 months, they gave me no direction, no leadership, no training, no mentoring, nothing. And at the end of it, it didn't work out because I'm bouncing all over the place a million miles an hour like a coked up rhesus monkey. And I mean, I just want to learn the business. So finally, the president called me in the day the GM had the day off, who didn't have the guts to fire me himself. And the GM spent 3 hours firing me. Or I'm sorry,
wow.
the president did. And he was my Dutch uncle. I didn't realize it at the time. And he just saw all the good in me. And then he pointed out areas where I really needed to focus. And then he said something that changed my life. And he said, and I'll never forget it. He goes, I'm looking at you and you are exactly me at exactly your age. And he goes, you will grow up and you will continue maturing. And as that happens, you are going to be an all-star somewhere in business. There is no doubt in my mind. He goes, but it's just not going to be here. And then he said, the greatest hat in hand close right out of Colombo that changed my life. He goes, by the way, Brian said you are completely untrainable in any sales or marketing capacity whatsoever. And I said, excuse me? And he goes, yeah, that was what Brian wanted me to relay to you, that you are untrainable in any sales or marketing capacity whatsoever. Now, you talk about lighting a flame.
Yeah, no kidding.
So 13 years later, I was doing a seminar with my first book featuring my software, an entire new sales and marketing system the world had never seen. And unfortunately, I was so far ahead of my time. This was in 2002. 20 years later, almost every Fortune 1000 company now has departments, whole departments that do what my software did 23 years ago.
Yeah, that is amazing story. It really is. So something very superficial that I've already found a pattern is that Joe of Toothstream was also a bartender.
Mm-hmm.
And but of a bigger thing is that I think that you have that personality where if someone tells you no or that you can't, your internal answer is watch me.
Hold my beer.
Yes. And I mean, there it is. That's what I love talking about these things. And you needed to have, I guess, that job where you had no mentorship, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just that little kick in the ass just to have you do the things that you obviously could teach yourself how to do. And so I have to first also ask you about the name you came up with. Print Miser is interesting.
Yeah, tagline was "We're cheap and easy." I didn't know how to sell anything at the time. I literally didn't know anything. I just thought everybody would want to save money on their office printing since you got to buy it anyway. So buy it from Print Miser. Uh,
That's hilarious.
it
Oh
only
my god.
lasted like maybe a year until somebody asked me to redesign their stuff, and then I changed the name to Zimmer Graphics. part of my last name. Zimmerman Graphics didn't
Yeah.
flow, but I thought, I'll try to build my name, then Zimmer Graphics. And then wound up as I got into sales training and writing books on professional selling and adaptive selling, I changed it to Sales Elevator with a tagline going up. And then later, when somebody realized that my software could automatically write and send these letters from salespeople to their audience, they said, wow, you're like a modern day Cyrano de Bergerac. And my light bulb went on. I'm like, holy crap, what a great name. So I changed it to Cyrano Group. Nobody got it. A great lesson. Never be, if you want to be the richest guy in the world, don't be the smartest guy in the world. Just make it so people get it. But
Yes.
anyways, I just kept getting bored, and then I'd learn something. And then I also would look at, does the world still want this? So as I taught myself graphic design, then eventually I wound up hiring designers and writers and, and build it into a company. The day I walked in to drop off back then a brochure as a newsletter proof to a client, I glanced over and I saw the receptionist had Microsoft Publisher on her screen. And I noticed she had a different version of the same newsletter we had just done. And here her boss was probably telling her, hey, I don't want to keep paying Zimmer Graphics. Learn how to do this. And then I realized, because that client was a friend of mine, and I'm like, if my friends who are rightfully re-engineering their own staff to be more efficient, the day's coming soon where nobody's going to pay us to design anything for them. And then at the time too, digital was becoming big. And I'm like, how long can I keep selling printing? It's a buggy whip business. So I'm always thinking about, is it still valuable? And am I really selling against great versus good? And it's a waste of my time. Nobody wants to pay for great when they can get good for next to nothing. So I was always looking for something I could do that the world wanted. And sometimes I would give them things they didn't even know they wanted yet. But if I could tell the story the right way, then I could get them to see what I was seeing. Sometimes they would buy, sometimes they wouldn't. But it forced me, the failures in my selling forced me to read everything I could on sales and psychology, how people make decisions, how people ingest information, how people use NLP. And so I just wanted to get good at selling my own software and my own services. And it was in the research of that I discovered the 4 personality types. And that spurred me to call one of the authors who was a hero of mine, who introduced me to one of his best friends. And then I began morphing more into more of a keynote speaker and a sales trainer and sales consultant and sales mentor, as much as I was more of a marketing company, because they actually go together. So I'm like, why would I design things for a trade show for the marketing people to go to get leads, to send them out to salespeople who don't know how to sell? So I'm like, well, let's fix that too. So I went and trained their salespeople. Then I built a system around both of them so they could have the same data and the same mineable database, but it was doing all the work for both sides, sales and marketing. And again, I only got the idea because somebody told me try to write a book on it, which slowed me down enough to think through what does the world really need. And then I dreamt the system to do it because my subconscious mind was latching onto problems. And while I was sleeping, it was dreaming of solutions.
No kidding.
Yeah. So,
That is fascinating to me. And so, so I don't want to just leave this point. Where during this time period did you have time to write books about this? And
well,
was it
the
about?
reason I didn't finish the first book was because I met a co-author and we wrote books 2, 3, 4, 5 like that because he taught me how to write a book. I just never went back and bothered rewriting the first book. And basically, he just said, just carry around index cards and a pen. And every time you get an idea for the book, write it on the front. And then pause and jot down 2 or 3 things you know about that idea, a story, a book you read about it, an example of where you went out and did it. And then throw that card in the drawer and you get another idea, write the big idea on the front and then a couple ideas that support it on the back. And when you're done with ideas, you pull them out and you lay them on the floor, big idea side up, and you go, that goes with that. That also goes with that. That also goes with that. And here's a chapter. Here's a chapter. Here's a chapter. And then you put the chapters in order. And then there's your table of contents. And then you just sit down and you start typing. Your next paragraph is right there. Your next story is right underneath it. And it comes right out.
And were were these books about your sales and the teaching and all that time?
We did one on sales mastery. We did one on small business mastery. We did one on trade show mastery. Those were the main ones that, and it was about my life running a small business and what I learned. And well, what it was, not just my life, it was advice for the
Yeah.
reader based on their personality type. And clearly, we all do tend to fall into one of four quadrants by and large. And so, as you go through the book, you learn about the 12 disciplines of running a small business, but how your personality type is likely to work for you or against you in each of the 12 disciplines. And
Okay.
so I wanted to mentor small business owners. Like for me, somebody who's clearly a director socializer combination, when you get to things like on sales, it just flat out says, if you're this style, this is the best thing you could be doing for your small business. Get out and sell more, hire people to do the details sort of stuff. So
Right.
anyways, I just wrote about what I was living and how well it was working in business. And I was trying to teach people how to go do what we were doing.
Are those books still out there? Because it
They
sounds like
are.
pretty universal.
Yeah, they're all on Amazon. I don't make any money on them, nor do I care. I'll tell you what I will do. Here's one for your listeners. Shoot me an email and I'll send you a free book. It's magazine, MAGASCENE at proton.me, not you, but me, magazine at proton.me. That's helpful. Thank you. And in the subject line, either put sales, business, or trade show, and I'll know which free book you want. And I'll email you back an electronic copy of the books. So the first part of each book is about understanding personality types or behavioral styles. And the second half of each book is how to go apply that knowledge in your business or your career.
Excellent. That I think that's so important because it sounds like that's information that's just never going to go away. That's just basic great information. And so I just find it so fascinating too is so there are parts of things in your life that you learn, and you self-taught. So you learned all the mechanics and the how to build these sites and how to have that part of your brain, but then you also understood the psychology, right, behind it. And so, when you first stumbled upon Q, right after it started, that was that analytical brain of yours, I think, where you were so used to putting things together in this amazing puzzle that seemed to be out there, and you got it, right? That you got that you wanted to be a part of it, if nothing else, right? And then as time goes on, as you're and this happened for me too, the psychological part of what we're going through is getting more and more incredible to understand and to watch,
It is.
and that's part of why I'm doing this, because psychologically for some reason you're seeing it and you saw it and something in your life, and all the things in your life and who you are allowed you to see it and be and want to dive into it, and others can't right now. And so I just find it so fascinating to hear your story of what you learned and what you understood at a younger age, which was able to allow you to dive into being open-minded and learning everything that's happening in this time period. And you weren't one, and you had to do it yourself, because it wasn't like someone like me that found others online. You saw it yourself, and you were really, as you were self-motivated to be, to learn marketing and sales and all those things, you had to be self-motivated to learn this whole operation. And I just find it fascinating, with that. And did your interest of it, even though you learn more about it, when you thought that those moments like Hillary, being taken care of and stuff were going to happen then, and they didn't, did that continue to motivate you more? Did that increase your curiosity? How did that go?
Oh, it greatly increased my curiosity because I kept trying to figure out why, who is doing this, why are they doing it, and what are they trying to accomplish. And so to me, I've always enjoyed like crossword puzzles and Sudokus. I like solving puzzles. It relaxes me. And the way that Q was operating and writing things, to me, it felt like the world's best wad of fresh mental chewing gum that just never lost its flavor. And it seemed like the more that you learned, the more mercurial it got. And I'm thinking, whoever they are, they've started a game and they know who they're going to attract, probably hundreds of thousands of some of the smartest people on the planet, and they know they've made a game of try to disprove us. And you
Yeah.
get you against 100,000 people, and their only thing is to try to poke a hole in your balloon. And you know that's
Yeah.
all they're going to do. And that thing still floats. I'm impressed.
Yes.
And
I,
so
I just I think it's just fascinating to your tenacity too, because I think that there have been people who have um, uh, found all of this out and got their curiosity going at the beginning, who still aren't involved as you are, who have kind of been deflated and have backed up from it. And you're still, I mean, I think also, and this just came into my head. I think you're still motivated not only because of your your love of wanting to help other people and your goodness and your true way of wanting to help other people, but your that tenacity that you had back when you were younger of just thinking of new ideas, of new ways to approach it, of new ways to get to people, of new ways. It comes into fruition for the current time, and I just think it's so cool
it
to
is.
see, Scott.
And it's, it is also, and thank you for showing the website. And real quickly, I'll tell you how that came to be and why. It's because within 2 weeks of finding Q, I got addicted to 4chan. And that's where Q was dropping. It was just a message board. It was the last frontier of the Wild West of the internet. No censorship, you name it, it was on there. But in between would be some of these anon comments and these Q drops that were worth digging through all the other stuff. And very quickly on, I noticed that Q's writing style was the Socratic method, which I had taught in sales, of asking
Ah,
questions to get people to arrive at their own understanding and their own decisions. So about 2 or 3 weeks in, I wrote this thing. I think it was November or December of 18 or 17. So I wrote this thing called the Socratic method for red pilling your family and friends without pissing them off. And I dropped it on 4chan. And the next day, somebody sent me a text. They go, Scott, did you write this? This sounds like you. And I go, I did. How the hell did you know that? And they goes, it sounds like your sales book. And I go, you're right. I pulled most of my ideas out of one of my sales books and I just reworded it. And the next thing you know, that thing's all over the internet because I spent 2 or 3 weeks throwing up all over my family's shoes about how great Q is and this is the next big thing and blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, nothing happened. So they shut me down. And I'm like, oh my God, I just pissed off my family. I didn't mean to. I better write something about, don't do what I just did. So I wrote this article and it went everywhere. And that's when it kind of struck me, and it was weird that I would get like a snippet of it like a year later out of the blue, and I'd forgotten I had written it, and I would read it and I'd go, God, that's really good advice. Who wrote that? And then I'd look down and go, shit, I wrote that. And I realized that what I had learned in my life and in business was pretty much timeless. And so on my podcast, I don't do things that are time sensitive. I've got friends who are great at that. Your Joe
mhm.
Rambos and News Trees and Daves, they can grab something out of today, tie it to a Q drop and make it relevant. There's enough people doing that. I wanted to do my podcast as these little time capsules of things that 10, 20, 30 years from now, people still watching them could understand that I was teaching what are called success laws that never
Yes.
go out of style. And I have read enough books and lived long enough to know there's really only about a dozen success laws. But every book you read is going to be based on one of them with a new story, a new metaphor, a new twist, a new analogy, and there really are only so many success laws. So I thought maybe I'll live the rest of my life applying these success laws to helping people get through the great awakening themselves with minimal collateral damage. And that's what
Yeah.
I've been doing with my life.
I love that. That's so awesome. And so that leads to me to my last thought I want you to hit upon. How has your spirituality
Mm,
grown in all of this?
yeah, it was rough. Because I thought I was so tight that I was inseparable with my relationship with Jesus, until I lost my business and I lost my clients because of the COVID, which I knew was fake. And as everything was being systematically taken from me, the thing that was probably the roughest that got me into my depression, I thought it was my family rejecting me and my wife, because we weren't vaxxed and refused to get vaxxed or tested. But it wasn't that. It was the fact that I lost my sense of value in the world, and I didn't have anybody to train. I didn't have anybody to mentor. I didn't have anybody to help. And to wake up on Monday and see a blank calendar for the week was so foreign to me that I went into a bad depression about 4 years
Wow.
ago, and it lasted for about 2 years. And I mean, I wasn't getting out of
Wow.
bed, um, but I went to give a speech about 3 years ago at Threadfest, which is now GART. The
Yeah.
Badlands puts on great events, by the way. I went to the last one in Vegas, loved it.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to talk about, and I'll give you the short version, otherwise I'd burn up another 10 minutes. But I was supposed to give a
No, I
talk
want to
about
hear.
red pilling based on personality type because I'd written books on it. And the night before I was supposed to speak, I was still greatly depressed. God woke me up at 1 in the morning and talked at me and with me for 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
And I was supposed to speak at 10 in the morning, and God said, "No, your speech is terrible. Give ours. Not mine, give ours." And they said, "We just need you to be hungry, be empty, and get out of the way." So I didn't eat breakfast. Then they moved me to 2, so I didn't eat lunch. And I walked on stage not having a clue what I was going to talk about until that 8-foot flag was made whole on the stage. It had been split like this. And the day before, this voice kept saying, "Look at the flag." And then when I woke up at 1 in the morning, God said, "That cleaved flag is your heart, Scott. And on one side is your family, and on the other side is you. And today we will make you whole." I don't want to, I'll start crying again, but this somebody, Brian Cates, recorded that speech. I don't remember a word of it, but there wasn't a dry eye in the house, and everybody chipped in and bought me that flag, and there was a laying of hands over me, and my healing began that day. And I'm telling you, God is real, and God spoke with me in my own voice for 5 straight hours and answered all my questions. And the one thing they said was, "Your depression begins ending today because your soul is too important to us." That's what they said. "Your soul is too important to us. We will never lose your soul, Scott. Don't worry about that." So, um, nobody knows how big this flag is. Look at this
What?
thing. And
You can't tell that how big it is.
no. So, anyway, so I just thought if I was going to do a podcast, make it about the flag, make it about God.
Yeah, right.
And I don't need anything else fancy in the background. I just want it to come out of my heart that if people hear me speak, they know that I love God with all my heart. And I love that flag and I love the world. So
That is the greatest story ever. And that is what I want to share with people. And that just means the world to me right now to hear it, and it's
I
gonna
will
mean the
get you a
world.
link to a show I did a month ago for Beth Schweier when she passed away. She's the one who painted that.
Oh, yes, please.
And I did a show honoring her where I do tell the story about the speech, and I think there might even be a link to the speech. So if your audience wants to get the whole story on that flag, it's worth it. It's a great story.
I can
Uh,
put that in the description when
yeah,
I
that'd be
post
that'll be
this.
fine. I'll get that to you.
That is what a story, and you just and I want to hear more, so I will definitely look at that. So thank you so much. And before you go, I just want to make sure we can now just talk about what you're doing, if there's any last things you want to
Yep. Well,
say or get out there.
I'll wrap it up with this. She put the website up there, and I'm currently working with another couple I just met. They're going to help me rebuild magazine.us, but the way it sits today is the way it'll probably sit mostly. We're going to tweak it, but it's a place where you could send your loved ones and they can red pill themselves. And so we don't push anybody anymore. I pushed my family away and I learned my lessons from that. I wish
Yeah.
I had just said, well, that's interesting. I'm starting to look into that too, and left it at that. And then sent them a link, said, hey, you were talking about building 7, even though I'm kind of an expert in it. I should have said, a lot of people are starting to talk about that. I can't believe that's coming back. But now I'm curious about it. Let's get together in a week. I'll go look for some stuff. You look for some stuff and let's compare notes. So I built the website so that no matter what somebody brings up, whether it's government corruption, open border, whatever it is, there's something there in the categories. And then they
Yeah.
can click on it and watch all these podcasts or read Substacks so they can wake themselves up without somebody chirping in their ear. Told you so. I knew that 8 years ago. Didn't you know that building 7 was just one of the things? Did you know anything about the Pentagon? What about the 2.3 trillion missing dollars? When in reality, I know that there's enough podcasts, enough shows. For example, they might watch me interview Richard Gage on building 7. But right next to that is another interview I did where Richard and I went back and forth on the 13 steps of propaganda that they used to sell us both 9/11 and COVID. So now somebody can wake up to not only building 7, but to the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and how big tech and the government worked in collusion to pull that off. And they did the same thing with COVID and the vax. So
Man.
somebody who just mentioned building 7, doing it my way, instead of even talking about building 7 and proving you know more to them, which would make them stop researching, you just say,
Yeah.
I'm interested too. Let's do this together. And let them be the expert. Let them teach you what they find. If they say it, they own it. If you say it, they push back. Let them say it.
See, that's awesome. I'm gonna go to your site and look at that, but everything that you just said, I hear your former self of of all those things that you've learned in the past, and it's coming to it's well needed right now in this time period.
I
So,
have made every mistake somebody can make throughout this movement, but I've only made them once. And every
yes.
time I stop, I write about it, I correct it, I tell the world, don't do this. It hurts. And
Well,
in this
you're
case, I try to
awesome.
give them some tools to avoid a lot of these pitfalls
Well,
that
you are, and you've given wonderful tools, and you're just still coming up with amazing different ways to approach it. And I just think the world of you, and I'm so grateful that you took the time to talk with me and to share it with the world. So thank you, Scott, so much. I really appreciate it. And we're gonna get this out there to the world this week. So thank you again for being a part of this. So grateful.
now I've got feedback for you.
Okay.
You are really super good at this. And it's so hard. I've been on your side of the screen more on than this side of the screen. You've never interrupted. You never talked over me. I'm sure you had a million ideas going through your mind and didn't jump in with any of them. And if you continue doing what I just saw with other guests, people are going to want to listen to these stories. You are super good at this, Ellen. I am so glad that you went on that Friday night show with Mark and Dave and probably Joe, because
It was.
they saw in you quickly what I just saw, and they gave you the best advice. Start a podcast. And for those of you listening, like Ellen, don't die with your music in you. Podcast, write a Substack, blog, journal, do something, but tell your stories. You've got a lot of advice younger people could use and will need someday. Just get it out. The world doesn't want perfection. The world wants authenticity.
Thank you, Scott. You're the best. I appreciate you so much. And I'm sure we'll be in touch again sometime very soon.
I'm looking forward to having you on my show. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Talk to you
Oh, by the way,
soon.
the show's called Untethering. You can find it at Beer at the Parade, all one word, on Rumble. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.